Welcome to another episode of Beyond the Roundup. On today's show, we're going to take a quick look at what is seeming to become quite the trend around the world. In the UK, COVID-19 hospitalizations are skyrocketing, despite a heavily vaccinated population. And this includes an upswing in deaths. And so we're going to talk about what is happening here. And so, from Trial Site News, I am Adrian, and our episode starts now. So, after 2 years of enduring lockdowns, crushing regulations, stripping average citizens of their freedoms, like mask mandates and vaccine passports, much of the UK's population now desire to go about life as usual, especially since the government there has made living with COVID-19 the path going forward, a plan that would remove much of the domestic restrictions, essentially declaring times were almost back to normal. Unfortunately, the unfolding situation informs a starkly different reality for the heavily vaccinated population. While new SARS-CoV-2 cases seem to be headed towards a more stable reality, this in fact could be happening only because mass testing is on the way out as SARS-CoV-2 associated deaths increase while hospitalizations have skyrocketed. It is also worth noting that while the UK Health Security Agency, or the UKHSA, has stopped sharing breakthrough infection data, some critical media and blogs deemed anti-vaccination by the mass media have made a point to emphasize that more vaccinated people are getting infected and hospitalized compared to the unvaccinated. What we do know, though, is that nearly 60% of the UK's population has received a third booster dose, with almost 75% of the population, and nearly all adults are fully vaccinated. Yet, hospitalization cases have been exploding in the UK. The unmistakable growth in hospitalized cases is raising concern across the UK, as the rates have been on a steady climb since even before the onset of 2022. Even though Omicron is generally milder, the mutant subvariant BA.2 now circulates ever more around the UK, and with the noticeable uptick in deaths, health authorities have voiced concern. And so, with the mounting hospitalizations and spiking death toll associated with COVID, the National Health Service, or the NHS, is starting to experience capacity challenges. In fact, the NHS Confederation warned the government that it needed to reconsider the Living with COVID plan, suggesting the ministers risk abandoning the NHS if no action is taken. Now, the NHS Confederation, which is representing healthcare organizations, report that the government's messaging that all is back to normal could very much mislead the public and discourage them to take steps to reduce transmission, contributing to the very high rates of COVID-19. The NHS has complained that the Treasury has taken bites out of the already very tight NHS budget, while soaring inflation means the NHS settlement is now worth less, and saying that we have been promised a living with COVID plan, yet all we have is a living without restrictions ideology. Imagine that, complaining about living without restrictions. The organization's chief executive, Matthew Taylor, has gone on the record saying that NHS leaders and their teams recognize the need to live with COVID as we move towards what the government hopes will become an endemic stage of the pandemic. However, they report a clear disconnect between the government's Living with COVID plan and the realities that they are facing at the NHS front line. So now this leads us to the question, could there be another lockdown? Well, this of course has led to speculation over whether there could be more government lockdowns in the near future. And while the return of restrictions has not been completely ruled out in the Living with COVID plan, the plan states that testing and vaccinations are the first line of defense, not lockdowns. In fact, Boris Johnson said on the matter when confirming the end of all restrictions in England that we have a very clear view of this, that this has not gone away. We're able to make these changes now because of the vaccines and the high level of immunity. But I believe that thanks to a lot of the stuff that we've done, particularly investment in vaccines and vaccine technology and therapeutics, that we will be in a far better position to tackle that new variant when it comes. We will encourage people with COVID symptoms to exercise personal responsibility, just as we encourage people who may have flu to be considerate towards others. This virus is not going away, but it is the day when all the efforts of the last 2 years have finally enabled us to protect ourselves whilst restoring our liberties in full. Of course, some critics have argued that the taking of those liberties should never have happened in the first place. And that, my friends, brings our episode to a close once more. As always, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. From Trial Site News, I am Adrian, and I will see you all next time.